This live stream may contain content that could be perceived as shocking or offensive, but it is presented solely for educational purposes. Viewer discretion is advised. We strive to adhere to community guidelines, and any potentially sensitive material is shared with the intent of fostering understanding and learning.
Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy, Atypical Security Guard, here, unfortunately, with yet another situation where police tactics has taken precedent over human life and civil liberty. This story is a little close to home. The person that ends up losing his life, he's a senior airman in the U.S. Air Force. I got out of the Air Force in the early 2000s, my grade E4 senior airman. So definitely, definitely hits home. I can empathize and sympathize with this guy's family, what they're going through. And then also there's some elements of the Second Amendment involved. We'll get into the story. I'll let you guys see how all this plays out, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well, me being a very staunch Second Amendment advocate. So the information that we have right now: Florida police kill a U.S. serviceman. The deceased is Senior Airman Roger Fortson, 23. He was shot late Friday afternoon by a deputy responding to a call of a disturbance in progress. The sheriff's office said this is out of Okaloosa County, and this is in the Florida Panhandle. The video that you guys are going to see, it lasts just about 4 minutes, a little bit over 4 minutes. It begins as the deputy arrives at Fortson's apartment complex and ends after Fortson has been shot and the deputy calls for medical assistance. The video shows the deputy knocking and twice identifying himself as sheriff's office. He opens the door, and when Fortson opens the door, he appears to be holding a gun that is facing downward. The deputy then fires and calls for medical assistance. Important to understand two things. Ultimately, this ends up being the wrong apartment. I believe that the sheriff's department is responding to some sort of domestic issue, some sort of call that has been made by someone who lives on the premises. There's some question as to whether or not this was the apartment where there was a disturbance. But the information that you should know about that is that this senior airman who is living in his apartment, he's on a Zoom call with his girlfriend. There is no one else in the apartment. There's nothing to suggest that he was having any sort of argument or any sort of fight with the girlfriend. And it seems that this is a case of the wrong location that the officers respond to. I want to, before we go any further, talk about something that has been a recurring theme on my channel. I have been talking at length about the issues of law enforcement departments utilizing tactical training, most importantly, military tactical training, and how that tactical training has been prevalent in causing problems in terms of officer-involved shootings. I have a couple of issues with the tactical training, how it applies to law enforcement officers. I'll give those to you really quickly right here. Number one, it creates an us versus them mentality within law enforcement, where they see the public as combatives as opposed to citizens that they serve. Number two, tactical training makes the primary focus of every interaction a life and death encounter to be solved in the officer's favor. And number three, officer safety is often placed at the apex of every outcome, even at the cost of civil rights. Guys, listen, regardless of if you agree with what I just said or not, in situations where there are officer-involved shootings, where the officer is involved on either side of the equation, right? The result is still the same. There's still going to be depending on the situation, a public backlash. There's going to be some level of wedge that's driven between law enforcement and the community. Situations like this, there's going to be a large and hefty civil payout that comes from the taxpayers. And it continues the cycle of the perception that law enforcement officers are shoot first, ask questions second. Now, I have been kind of chastised and I've been ridiculed and I've been kind of called to the carpet by people in the security industry, people in law enforcement. I have reached out to several law enforcement officers to have this conversation, to talk about some very real issues that are going on within the law enforcement community. Very well documented training that is going on that is putting officers in a position where they are approaching situations just as I laid out with those 3 points. To this date, I've had one, maybe two officers who've been willing to come on and have this discussion. My stance has always been that I support law enforcement, that I firmly believe that we need law enforcement, that we need good police officers. I do not believe in the defund movement. I do not believe in painting law enforcement officers in a bad light. I feel that the over-reliance on tactical training over the last 20 years and utilizing a lot of military servicemen coming back from overseas, coming back from seeing war, seeing tours, I think that has played heavily into the situations that we're dealing with. You also take that situation and you couple that with the politicalization of law enforcement and everything that's going on right now, and it's a recipe for disaster. Now, I don't want you to take my word for it. I want to share with you guys a video, and I want you to hear where this training is taking place. And I want you to hear the location. I want you to listen to the story that's coming out of this. But I think it'd be better for me just to play it and let you guys hear this, and then we'll go from there. Okay? Stand by.
Well, next here tonight, hundreds of law enforcement officers are attending a private law enforcement conference in Kissimmee this week called Street Cop Training.
A New Jersey comptroller's office report released late last year says the company taught unconstitutional policing tactics, glorified violence, and denigrated women and minorities at a 2021 conference in that state. Tonight, I-Team investigator Adam Walser is digging into that report and learns how your tax dollars have gone to support this controversial company.
Like 91 with hookers and cocaine around it, you know? Why wouldn't that be your goal and objective?
That's Street Cop Training founder Dennis Benigno musing about hookers and cocaine in a room full of cops.
These girls are not as wealthy and they need to do things to make money.
The video clip was released by the New Jersey State Comptroller's Office, which subpoenaed and obtained hours of footage from a 2021 conference in Atlantic City.
What we found was really disturbing. Instructors taught unconstitutional policing practices.
The report said instructors made over 100 discriminatory or harassing comments.
If you're trying to get a little booty down whatever you call it, okay, there's an approach.
That's former West Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Reserve Officer Sean Paradisi, who also taught about vehicle pursuits.
Run for me. Somewhere along the chase becomes...
Street Cop's founder Benigno was seen in another clip discussing how he handles a civilian shooting video of him with a cell phone.
Shut the f*** up, right? I'll get pepper sprayed, tased, windows broke out, motherfucker.
Benigno resigned from the Woodbridge, New Jersey Township Police Department after a black woman alleged in a federal lawsuit that she was falsely arrested, racially profiled, and assaulted by the defendant officers based on her race and gender. The suit alleged Benigno jumped on her car hood, pointed a gun at her face, and told her he was going to shoot her. The case was settled by the township. Benigno is a featured speaker this week at a Street Cop conference at the Gaylord Palms Conference Center in Kissimmee. The I-Team went to Gaylord Palms, where we saw marked vehicles from at least 26 law enforcement departments in Florida and neighboring states. Haines City, Auburndale, and Sarasota police departments all had officers attending the conference.
It's important to keep in mind that this conference is happening in Florida, okay? The shooting that we're going to be discussing also happens in Florida.
At a rate of $699 per person, plus food and lodging. Those local agencies declined on-camera interviews. We went inside the conference center, which is open to the public and hosts multiple simultaneous events. I-Team photographer Matt McGlashan was confronted after he was spotted shooting a Street Cop sign with his phone in the hallway.
I'm asking you not to come back, okay?
Okay.
So,
is there somebody we can talk to if I give you my card with
sure.
cell phone number?
Sure.
Yeah, we want to talk to you because
this is kind of a controversial
Yeah.
conference,
So
and we wanted to see
I don't know how it is, but
about all
if you
this
do
stuff.
come back, right, we're working with the sheriff's department, so you're not allowed to come back inside. So if you do come back, we're gonna go for another step. Do you understand, sir?
Yeah. Multiple people wearing tactical gear looked on as we were approached again while trying to leave.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing? Good, good. You with the conference?
No, sir. I'm with the hotel.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm one of the security managers here.
Okay. Do we need to leave?
Yeah, we just got reports you guys were kind of filming what's going on.
We were just in the lobby. Is that okay?
Gotcha.
Security followed us in a golf cart as we left the property, just minutes after paying a $37 daily parking fee. We emailed the conference's press contact but didn't hear back. Benigno posted a video response to the New Jersey report on YouTube.
Almost 1,000 police officers know exactly what happened during the 2021 conference, and not one ever complained that there was anything short of great training.
So it's important to note that at the beginning of this video, it says that there's over 100 documented comments of racially insensitive comments, derogatory comments towards women and other minorities, right? And the creator or the lead instructor for this training is now here on video saying that no other officers complained. That's part of the problem. If there were 2 racially insensitive, if there were 2 derogatory comments towards females or other minorities, that is enough for someone to have complained, right? The information that we're talking about right here, let me pull this out for a second. The information that we're talking about with this conference, and I have a extensive video of what went on at this conference that we will break down in a future video. But that's part of the problem, is that there's no one complaining. And the response from this individual is no different than the response that we saw in 2020. There's a response of defiance. There's a response of digging in, right? If there is a perception that what you're teaching, if there's a perception that what you're doing is somehow dismissive, disrespectful, racist, misogynistic, or if it's clearly violating of people's rights or advocating for the violation of people's rights, that is something that you would think from his perspective, from his company's perspective, they would be like, hey, we need to get out in front of this. And if that's what you guys are getting from what we're teaching, let me explain where we're coming from. Let me share with you what we're doing. Complete open transparency. Let me go over our outlook, go over our product, go over what we're teaching these law enforcement officers so that you don't see it that way. Maybe there's a misunderstanding or a disconnect, but for this person to kind of dig his heels in and be combative in his response, that speaks volumes. Okay, let me get back into what he has to say.
Know that since 2021, street cop training received payments from 5 Florida departments or agencies, including the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and the Department of Agriculture. The OSC report said street cop trained 2,000 New Jersey officers a year.
Taxpayers paid for a training that normalized discriminatory and harassing behavior by public servants who were supposed to be held to very high standards.
The company recently moved to Florida and declared bankruptcy in January. Records show street cop training owed Gaylord Pumps nearly $250,000 at that time.
While we were painted as the bad guys, we are in fact the good guys, creating better, more well-trained police officers for a country that expects the best. And that every friend of yours who you work with is 106 and a 50, you stop me on a job. Have a good one, right?
I'm I-Team investigator Adam Walser with photojournalist Matt McGlashan, taking action for you.
Now, bear in mind that the investigation into this company comes from New Jersey. It doesn't come from Florida. Why is that? Right? Without getting into a political conversation, a political debate, Florida has become a haven for far-right extremism. And I consider myself a Republican. I consider myself a conservative, right? But the attacks on anything and everything that doesn't fall into one specific demographic, the over reliance on policing and law enforcement, the unabashed support of any type of actions that are taken. There's no surprise that this is happening in Florida, right? So that's the backdrop of the type of training that this company is providing, the location where it is being provided. So let's get back to the situation of the service member who recently lost his life. I want to bring in a video that talks about the specifics of the case. So stand by.
U.S. Airman from Atlanta was killed in a shooting by a Florida sheriff's deputy. He's been identified as 23-year-old Senior Airman Roger Fortson. He was in his off-base home when this happened. According to the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Department, it happened late Friday night when a deputy responded to a call about a disturbance in progress and came across an armed man. The deputy fired at Fortson who later died. Law enforcement called it self-defense, but attorneys for Fortson's family says there is much more to this story. They say Fortson was on a FaceTime call as this all happened. That person says that he answered a knock at the door. When nobody responded, he got his gun. The family's attorney says he was returning to the living room when police burst through the door and shot him 6 times. That witness claims the deputy was at the wrong home and Fortson was home alone. The attorney says Fortson, a graduate of McNair High School in DeKalb, joined the military after graduating with honors and has no criminal history. The deputy has been placed on administrative leave, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement is now investigating. Civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump has taken this case. He and his team will be joining the Fortson's family for a news conference this morning as they're calling for transparency and the release of all the body camera footage.
So we have a video of Benjamin Crump and the family. I'm not going to play it. To be honest with you, like I'm at a point where I'm literally sick to my stomach of playing videos with Benjamin Crump standing next to families. I'm sick of it for 2 reasons. I'm sick of it because I'm tired of seeing this happening, number one. And number two, I'm tired of his grifting off of the situation. He is a very high-powered attorney. He is a very well-connected political figure. I think that if he wanted to push for some sort of change, some sort of accountability across the board, he would be better served to do that. But he makes a lot of money being a lawyer in these situations. Someone in the comments asked, what is my point? Well, I've been very clear about my point. My stance on tactical training for police officers is that it creates a us versus them mentality within law enforcement, where they see the public as combatives as opposed to citizens that they serve. Number two, that tactical training makes the primary focus of every interaction a life and death encounter to be solved in the officer's favor. And that number three, officer safety is often placed at the apex of every outcome, even at the cost of civil rights. Now, when we're talking about civil rights, what do I mean by that? Guys, Florida is a stand your ground state. Florida also recognizes Castle Doctrine, right? The Second Amendment is proudly enforced and respected in Florida. This is a U.S. service member who has no criminal history, no criminal background. The law enforcement officer, and if you watch the body camera footage, the law enforcement officer identifies himself as Sheriff's Department. He steps off to the side. And the story from the girlfriend is that, hey, they're on the middle of a Zoom call. I don't know if this guy was wearing headphones, what the situation was, but when he apparently goes to the door, looks out the peephole, does not see anyone, right? In that situation, if you are to assume that the only thing that he was aware of is that someone was beating on the door, and I believe that the girlfriend says that she tells him, hey, someone's beating on your door. If he has on headphones and he's being told that by the girlfriend, he looks out the peephole, doesn't see anybody. In that same situation, I too would probably grab my firearm, right? So I want to give the law enforcement officer a little bit of leeway in terms that when this person opens the door, assuming that the law enforcement officer has gone to this location, thinking that he's going to encounter someone who's being aggressive, someone who's in the middle of a domestic situation, he's working off of the information that he's been told, right? I give him a little bit of leeway and a little bit of credence that when that door opens up and he sees that firearm, that there is a understandable and undeniable fear that he potentially could be in danger, and he responds, right? Where I think that we have to also hold the law enforcement officers accountable is that training that they are leaning into. And this is a very tough and difficult conversation because I understand. I get it. I don't work as a law enforcement officer. I've been told that many, many times. You're not a cop. You don't work the street. You don't know what we go through. And I want to say right here publicly that you are 110% right. Okay. My feeling and my conjecture, and I'm a U.S. citizen who pays taxes, so I feel that I'm able to make an opinion and have a viewpoint on this, is that the over-reliance on tactical training puts officers in a position where they are so dialed in to stopping that threat. And a lot of times, people in society, not only in this situation, but in every situation, people in society do things that maybe are not in their best interest. And I don't know that that should cost them their life, right? I've told this story before. I was working security in a retail establishment, and a guy walks into the store. He doesn't see me, walks right past me with a baseball bat in his left hand and a firearm in his right hand. And I'm looking at the back of this guy, and I recognize that the magazine that he has in this firearm, it's a 30-round drum. I own the exact same magazine. And so my thought process in seeing this person walk into the store was, what do I do in this situation, right? I could have drawn my firearm on him. I could have, tried to get his attention. I could have tried to, engage this person, take him to the ground. I could have maybe fired off a shot, right? But in that moment, I'm thinking about every possible situation that could come from that. I know that no matter what I do, I can't take that bullet back. I can react. I can respond to anything that he does, especially in a situation where I'm behind this person and he doesn't know that I'm there. But the one thing that I can't do is take that bullet back if I send it. I was very well aware of that I could not take that bullet back if I sent it. We were lucky enough in this situation that this person walks through the entirety of the store. He never articulates that pistol from the ground towards anyone. We had eyes on him the entire time. He gets outside of the building. The cops respond. They take him to the ground. They find out that the firearm is fake. The magazine is real. And the cop comes over and he tells me, he says, hey, under the same circumstances, considering the fact that we've had so many mass shootings that have happened in grocery stores, in retail establishments, I want you to know you would have been well within your rights if you would have taken that shot. And I thought to myself, no, you would have been well within your rights as a law enforcement officer. I don't think that anyone would have questioned if a cop would have taken that shot. I don't know that me as a security guard, lacking a union, lacking qualified immunity, that I would be able to do that in that same instance. And that was the first time that I saw this imbalance in what police officers are able to do and how they're able to utilize the cover of, and I don't want to say cover in terms of it not being real or legitimate, but there's no other word that I can use for it, the cover of officer safety, to be able to be a blanket over taking the steps to actually pull the trigger and shoot that person where I don't have that authority. You watching this video, you don't have that authority. I think there needs to be a little bit more of that same balance between law enforcement officers and interacting with the public, because in situations like this, you can't take it back. The understanding of officer safety, the need for officer safety, the understanding that police officers are under no obligation to allow themselves to be shot, all of that is so true and it's understood. But if they're constantly being trained and constantly being put into a mindset that it's us versus them, and that every person that we come in contact with is a potential threat, they're not a citizen, they're not a community member, they're not, a constituent, they're a potential aggressor, then these are going to be the results. And at the end of the day, the result is the same. Whether you agree with what I'm saying, if you think that I'm out of line, if you think that I'm crazy, you think that I'm just rambling, the results are the same. A young man is dead. A young serviceman is dead. A young black man is dead at the hands of a police officer for no fault of his own. If we say that what he did was stupid to answer that door with that firearm in his hands, we have to agree that the Second Amendment doesn't apply. We have to agree that castle doctrine doesn't apply. We have to agree that stand your ground doesn't apply. And I don't think that anybody here is willing to say that. If you're a Second Amendment advocate, you're a patriot, if you believe in the Constitution. And that's the dichotomy of situations like this. So where is the common denominator? The common denominator is the training in which officers are responding to every situation, ready to put their safety, understandably, over almost every aspect of this situation. And so if this were a situation that led to a widespread protest, if this was a situation that led to, further distrust in law enforcement, a further wedge between law enforcement and the black community, law enforcement and any community, right? Is that a positive? And I can't seem to get law enforcement officers across this platform on YouTube to be willing to sit down and say, clearly this isn't working. Which makes me wonder, is the thought process that this is working? And that to me is an even more frightening thought process. Okay. Let me get some comments here before we get out. PBE says, Benjamin Crump is always there when black people get killed by police almost every time. Sad but true. Yeah, he needs to find a better way to utilize his I don't want to say talents, but definitely his business model. How hard is it to find the correct address? I don't get it. Yep. Jack Spade Production says, real issue is moral decay. Our society is broken, and I hate to say it, but it's not getting any better. When you raise a generation to be morally bankrupt, you get today's mess. I think that is a true statement. And there's so many times where I never would come on here. It would be rare to have me come on here and stick up for someone who is a bad person, who's done something wrong, where conceivably it's their fault. There's nothing about this young man that he deserved to have happened to him what happened to him. By all accounts, honor student in high school, goes into the military, serving his country, on the phone with his girlfriend. Not out doing anything, not out bullshitting, not causing a problem, literally in his apartment. Like what else can you ask for in that situation? He's literally at his apartment, in his house, on the phone with his girlfriend. And that has cost him his life. Like, if we can't galvanize around one situation to address this reoccurring problem, what situation would it take? Right? So let me go ahead and pull in. I'm going to go ahead and play the family's video. Let's see what they have to say. I don't want to play the whole thing. Let's play a little bit, see what Benjamin Crump has to say.
A couple of hours from now, the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office will hold a press conference addressing the shooting death of U.S. Air Force Airman Roger Fortson.
The 23-year-old's family held a press conference last hour demanding accountability from law enforcement, who they said busted into the wrong apartment last week and shot and killed their son. Here's Fortson's mom talking about a call she got from Roger's girlfriend, who was allegedly on the phone with him during the entire incident.
She called me and said, Mama, she said the sheriff just kicked in Roger's door, and I heard them say something about 3 shots. I told her, I said, don't hang up that phone. And I just started calling everybody, and I was so discombobulated. Everybody said the only thing I was saying was Roger.
NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas joins us now live from our Miami bureau. Guad, I mean, this is just heartbreaking. The family says that law enforcement just went into the wrong apartment. It's hard to imagine. Tell us more about what they say happened. And frankly, has the sheriff's office confirmed that detail?
Morgan, Vicky, well, the family has a lot of details that came from the girlfriend, Roger's girlfriend, who was on the phone with him the night of the incident on FaceTime. These are the details that we heard from Roger's mother and from the attorney. A lot of details because she says, the girlfriend says, that first he heard a knock at the door. Roger went to the door. The girlfriend claims that he tried looking through the peephole, and it seemed like somebody was covering that peephole, and that's why he walked back into the room to retrieve a gun. And when he was walking back towards the door is when the officers burst in and they shot him. So all of these details, again, were shared by his girlfriend who was on the phone with him. Now, the family was very emotional today. His mother with other family members upset because they feel like the sheriff's department was not transparent. Roger's mother was very adamant today about people mentioning his name and also that he was a senior airman with the Air Force. She feels like the sheriff's department did not share a lot of the details about him and about what happened. Here's part of that press conference.
You come into my apartment, you shoot and kill me, and then you say it was self-defense. How does that make any sense? And so it is about the truth, it's about transparency, and it's about justice.
Truth and transparency, that's what the attorneys and the family are asking for at this point.
Guad, what do we know at this point about body cameras? Were these law enforcement officers wearing cameras, and will that footage come out?
So this press conference took place about an hour ago, and during that press conference, we learned that the sheriff's department will now be holding a press conference in the next 2 hours where they would be sharing video related to this investigation. So the attorneys were in fact talking about the possibility that this video could give more details, because what they have are the details from Roger's girlfriend, right, who was on the phone on FaceTime, but now with the body cam video from the officers, they will be able to have more information as to what happened. Vicky, Morgan.
So I have seen the body camera footage. Again, it's out there. I give grace to the officer in the fact that, unlike some situations and some circumstances, he does identify himself. He identifies himself as sheriff's department. The crux of the conflict comes that he's potentially at the wrong address. Clearly, he's not, the person that is shot is not doing anything. There's no screams that are coming from the inside the apartment. There's no exigent circumstances. The guy opens his door. He is holding a firearm. However, perfectly legal for him to have done that. He's in his home. He does not articulate the firearm towards the officer. However, how quickly can someone take a firearm from the ground and point it towards a police officer, right? Extremely quickly. So this is that gray area of there's nothing that's clean about this situation, which I think that if you take anything away from what I'm saying right now, most situations that end up in a officer involved shooting that I am just watching from the peripheral, I'm not a police officer. Okay. I'm just giving my personal opinion as a sane, sober, moral human being. Most of these situations, they're never clean. Aside from the lunatic who literally is standing in the middle of the street threatening to kill everybody, or the person that legitimately pulls a firearm on a police officer, I think that a lot of these murky, dirty situations where there's I hate to assign any sort of guilt on this young man. I don't feel that he did anything wrong. However, from the tactical standpoint, speaking about tactics, you can see where the officer is coming from. That, to me, is the crux of the conflict and where the conversation needs to start. I don't know that there's going to ever be a change in the dynamics of how police officers are training. I think, if anything, it's going to only get more intense, more aggressive. Now, if you take everything that I've talked about over the last 30 minutes and you put that up against the video that I shared at the very beginning of the training of law enforcement officers being trained by people who are at least coming off insensitive, at least being a little dismissive of people's civil rights, talking about doing harm to American citizens, That should give you something to think about. And if you're a law enforcement officer, if you're a cop, if you work in that industry and you don't agree with that, you should be speaking out about that. It shouldn't be a security guard. I'm just a guy. I'm a security guard, and I'm constantly told that I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Okay, well then the conversation needs to come from law enforcement then. Two things cannot be true at the same time. I can't not know what I'm talking about, not have a leg to stand on, to be completely off base. But then we have a video of a conference where they're training thousands of law enforcement officers, and no one is standing up and saying what you're saying is inappropriate, what you're saying is wrong, what you're talking about is violating people's civil rights. That is an area where you guys should be speaking up about that. Okay. That's my thought. A couple more comments before we get out of here. At this point, everyone will have to answer the door with body armor and a ballistic shield. Yeah, I don't want to laugh because it's not funny, but I mean, we're seeing this happen quite a bit, right? I don't know if I can get, if I can let the officer get any play with this one. I agree, Warden. You know, I'm trying to be sensitive to the situation. I don't want to always come off like I'm bashing law enforcement. I'm not. But, you know, you have to be honest about things and just say, this is not okay. That's not right. Yeah. All right. I look forward to any comments that you guys have, any thoughts that you have. Again, I'm just one person. I'm looking at the tea leaves. I'm looking at what my thought process is about the over-reliance on tactical training. I think that it's becoming way too prevalent, and it's leading to things like this. I open up my platform to any, and I say this with 100% transparency. I open up my platform to any law enforcement officer who truly wants to come on here and have this conversation. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me what I'm missing here. Explain to me what is right about that training video that we saw. Explain to me how that is not creating situations where people feel emboldened to respond quickly and deadly in situations without any sort of assessment of the situation. I am willing to be educated. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm hopeful that I'm wrong. But I need you guys to be willing to come on here and have this conversation. Okay? All right. Drop your comments, share, like, subscribe, watch your back, and get a knock at your door, man. You know, back up, I guess. All right. Be great.